Good morning. Today we are solving our second way, or looking at our second way to solve linear systems, and that is by substitution. Our first way that we learned, I'm just going to do a side note down here. Our first way that we learned was by graphing. So wherever we had one line cross our second line, that is where our answer was, or our solution. It might have been the number 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or something like that. That was our solution, x, y, to a system, meaning more than one equation. Now today, we're going to learn a second way, but instead of graphing, we're going to do it by substitution. So substitution, or substitute, is meaning that you're taking the place of something. So for example, if I am your teacher, and I'm gone, you have a substitute. Someone who takes the place of me in the classroom. Another example, if you're going to be baking something, let's say you're making muffins, and you have to put oil into the muffin mix, like oil and water and flour and whatever, but you want it to be a little bit healthier, you can substitute it or take that out and put in applesauce instead, and that's true. There are lots of other things you can substitute or take the place of. In this case, we're going to solve this equation for x, but we're going to substitute or plug in a -9 whenever we see the letter y. So just like in my classroom, when I'm gone, if this y is me, I'm literally not there anymore, and the -9 is taking its place. So we're going to rewrite this to x plus y, but y is me, I'm gone, I'm sick or something. And now this -9 needs to come in and take my place. So there's a -9, and then equals 5. When you have the plus and negative, you don't really need the plus sign. It's just really a -9. So we just need to solve this like normal. So this is a -9. To get rid of that, we need to add 9 on both sides. So we have 2x equals, and then 5 plus 9 is 14. Our goal, you guys, is to get x right now all by itself. And then the opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. So we have x equals 7. So, like I told you before, our answer has to be in the form x, y. So we know that x is right here 7, and y up here was -9. So if we were to graph these two lines, this line right here and the line y equals 9, we would have our two lines cross at this point, 7, -9. Let's try the same thing, but instead of plugging in just one number, x this time is going to be this whole piece, y plus 4. So whenever we see me, x, I'm the teacher, I'm going to be substituted for this whole big piece. So anytime I see that letter x, instead I'm going to plug in y plus 4. And because this goes together, I need to keep that in parentheses. So I have 2, and then times x, but it's a whole piece, y plus 4, and then plus 3y equals 14. Notice this is all copied exactly the same. The only difference is whenever I saw an x, I plugged in y plus 4. So I'm going to solve this. In order to do that, I know I need to distribute first. So 2 times y is 2y. 2 times 4 is 8. And then this 3y is still just plus 3y. Before we start adding and subtracting, we need to combine our like terms. 2y plus 3y. They're on the same side, so we can add them up. They're both positive. That gives us 5y. So write the rest. Plus 8 equals 14. And then get y by itself, so I'm going to get rid of this 8, subtract 8. Get rid of your addition and subtraction first. And then 14 minus 8, there's 6 left over. So we have 5y equals 6, but I need y by itself, so I'm going to divide by 5. And my answer is y equals 6/5, or if you want to write that as a mixed number, 5 goes into 6 one time, and there's one piece left over, so 1 and 1/5. I would accept either of these answers. But we need to write our answer as a point x comma y. I know y right here is 6/5 or 1 and 1/5. If you wanted to convert that even to a decimal, 1.2, that's fine as well. Maybe I'll use a decimal. When we graph, it's easier to do a decimal maybe, I don't know. I would accept either. But now we also need to find x. I know x is y plus 4. Well, and I also know y is also now 1.2. So I just take this 1.2 and plug it in there. X is 1.2 plus 4. So x has to be, well, 1.2 plus 4 is 5.2. Or 5 and 1/5. So this is my answer, x comma y, where these two lines would cross if they were both solved for y and graphed. So here's a second set reminder that system means we have more than one equation. So we have two equations. We need to take one and plug it into the other. Back here they told you, hey, here's our equation, plug this one in because it's already solved for x. It doesn't matter if your equation is solved for x or solved for y. Whatever x or y is by itself, that whole piece is plugging in for the number that, or the letter that's by itself. So for example, in this first equation, we have y all by itself. So anytime I see y in my equation, my other equation, I'm going to plug in whatever it's equal to. So this one, y is equal to 3x plus 2. So I'm going to take that 3x plus 2, and I'm going to plug it in anytime I see the letter y. So y is right here, so I'm going to take that whole piece and plug it in for y in the second equation. So I'm just going to rewrite this equation. X plus 2, and it's touching the y, so multiplied by y, which is this whole thing, y is equal to 3x plus 2. And then it says equals 11. So I need to solve this to figure out what x is. So first, I'm going to distribute. This is really a 1x, so I'm going to put 1 there. 2 times 3x is 6x, and 2 times 2 is 4. Then 1x plus 6x gives me 7x. And then get x all by itself, get rid of your addition and subtraction. Subtract 4. So we have 7x. And 11 minus 4 is also 7. That works out nicely. Better numbers this time. And then divide by 7. X equals 1. Now reminder, my solution is always the point x comma y, where my two lines would cross if I were to graph them. So I know x is 1, but I still need to figure out what y is. So I can actually plug this x, that 1, back into either one of these original equations. I just like to use this one because it's already solved for y, and that's what we're trying to figure out. So I have y equals 3x plus 2. I just rewrote that. But instead of an x, I'm going to plug in a 1. 3 times 1 plus 2. Which is the same thing I did back here. It was just a lot easier because this y was all by itself. 3 times 1 is just 3. So 3 plus 2 is 5. So once you have the main part of the problem done, this part isn't so bad. It's easy to find that. Some of you could maybe even do that in your head. Alright, next, this one, instead of having y by itself, it has x by itself. So anytime I see x, I'm going to plug in this whole equation. I looked between my two equations which one already had a letter all by itself. If the first one had a letter by itself, I would have used that one and plugged into the second. So this time, anytime I see the letter x, I'm going to plug in 6 minus 4y. So I'm going to rewrite this equation and substitute or plug in 6 minus 4y for the letter x. So 2, and then in parentheses here, because it's multiplied, I have 6 minus 4y, and then minus 3y equals 1. all I did was rewrite this equation, but with the 6 minus 4y in place of the x. The x is gone. Some people want to leave the x there. If a substitute teacher is coming, that teacher is no longer there. This whole piece is coming in and taking its place. So let's distribute. 6 times 2 is 12. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8y. And then get the y's together. Negative 8y, negative 3y, they're all negatives. Don't forget that negative. So that's negative 11y. And then we have the 12 over there. And then get the y all by itself. Get rid of your addition and subtraction. So subtract 12. We have negative 11y equals, now there's more negatives, negative 11. And then get y by itself. The opposite of multiply is divide by negative 11. Y equals, now two negatives make a positive 1. So there's y in our answer xy. Y is 1. So you can plug this back into either equation. I just like the first one because it's a little bit easier. The letter x is all by itself, and that's what we're trying to find. So I just wrote the equation out, and we know y is a 1. So 6 minus 4 times 1. Some of you are going to want to do 6 minus 4 first. No. Order of operations, we have to do multiplication and division first. So 4 times 1 is just 4. So 6 minus 4 now is 2. So x is 2. The only thing that's different on this next problem, in the past I had an x all by itself, so I could plug that in for x, or I had a y all by itself, so I could plug that in for y. But now I don't have x or y by itself. So what I need to do is solve one of these to get x or y by itself so we can substitute or plug it in. This x is the closest to being all by itself because there's not a letter with it, or a number with it, sorry. So to get that x by itself, I'm just going to move this 2y over to the other side by adding. So I have x equals, and then it really doesn't matter which one you write first. I'm going to write the y first. 2y minus 6. Now that we have a letter all by itself, we can substitute or plug it in to the other equation for that letter, x. So anytime I see x, I'm going to plug in 2y minus 6 right there. Notice I'm plugging it into the other equation. You could call this equation 1. Oh, they already have that here. And equation 2. I'm taking equation 2 and I'm plugging it into equation 1. So I'm going to rewrite equation 1. It says 4x, and x is really 2y minus 6. Then it says plus 6y equals 4. So let's solve that to figure out what y is, because y is the only letter we have left. The x was replaced with 2y minus 6. So let's distribute. 4 times 2 is 8, so we have 8y. 4 times negative 6, 6 times 4 is 24. Write the rest. And then combine our like terms before you start adding and subtracting. They're all positives here. 6 plus 8 is 14y. And then we have minus 24 equals 4. And then we need to get y all by itself, so I'm going to add 24. So we have 14y. 24 plus 4 more is 28. And then last, the opposite of multiply by 14 is divide by 14. 14 should go into 28 only 2 times. So I know my answer in terms of x and y. Y is 2. That's what we just found. But now we need to figure out what x is. You can plug it back into equation 1 or equation 2, or the equation you rewrote, because equation 2 really is the same thing here. We just moved one to the other side. I'm going to use the one that I rewrote because it's easier to find out what x is, because x is all by itself already. So 2 times y, and y is 2, and then minus 6. Order of operations tells me to multiply first. 2 times 2 is 4. So 4 minus 6, which is just negative 2. So my answer is negative 2, comma 2. So I would like you to try this last one on your own. And then when you're done, go ahead and start your homework. The second one, I would suggest probably solving for this letter y. If you solve for a different x or y, that's fine. You'll get the same answer in the end. You just might not have as nice of numbers. So to get this y by itself, I'm going to subtract the 3x. So we have y equals, I'll write your x's first, negative 3x minus 7. So now that y is by itself, I'm going to substitute or plug it in to my first equation. This whole piece, wherever I see the letter y, right here in equation 1. So that whole thing is going in there. So I'm going to rewrite this. It says negative 2x plus 4y, and y is really negative 3x minus 7. And it's all equal to 0. So let's distribute here first. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12x. 4 times negative 7 is negative 28. And then we need to combine our like terms first. Negative 2 and a negative 12, same sign, add them up. That's negative 14x. And then we need to get x all by itself, so get rid of your addition and subtraction first. I'm going to add 28. We have negative 14x equals a positive 28. And then divide by a negative 14, because it's multiplied, we need to divide. I think we did one like this earlier. 14 goes into 28 2 times, but it's negative. And in our answer, that is the number x, or that's the letter x, negative 2. But we also need to find y. I'm going to use my rewritten equation to find y. So it says y equals negative 3 times x, which is negative 2, and then minus 7. Well, negative times a negative makes a positive 6. So 6 minus 7 is negative. It's a negative 1. And that's my answer. Be careful with your negatives and positives. Make sure to double check your work. If you want to make sure that it works, you could plug x and y back into both of your original equations to prove that it does work. Make sure to put your name, your hour, and the assignment, which is like 7.2, on your paper. You have to do problems 2 through 17. Good luck.